The broadcast is live. This is Coach Arnie with the Health, Love, and Life and Adventure show on the WGSN-DB Going Solo Network, radio, TV, and podcast, #1 internet talk network. And tonight, or today's show has a great guest, Garrett Wood. And let me just tell you a little bit something about Garrett so we can get the show rolling here. Garrett Wood is the CEO, founder of Crossroads of Fitness, a mindset and transformational coaching business for high performers, which she founded in 2014 after 2 years of working with high performers, more focused on physical transformation. Garrett's coaching pivoted into deeper mindset work, and her clients brought her with them into the executive space, where she guides them today to greater awareness around their values, their why, and their mission. Also helping them to heal their team dynamics, to innovate with human capital. Welcome, Garrett. How are you tonight?
Thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here, and I'm excited to talk with you.
Yeah, we're just going to have a conversation. You've got a lot of stuff. It kind of reminds me of me. You're all over the place. And so I want you to take as much time as you would like to explain to everybody what you're doing, how you're doing it, and who you're doing it with, and anything else that comes up in the conversation, because I've got lots of neat questions I want to ask you about. So why don't we just start off, Garrett, and maybe take what I just said there and kind of explain where you started and where you're at today.
Sure thing. Like you said, a lot going on, so I'll try to make it brief. But I'll start by saying I'm a type 7 on the Enneagram, which would make a lot more sense because I'm an enthusiast. I do a lot of things. Our downside is we don't always finish them, but I like to think I've finished a lot of the things I've started. But I'm from the Midwest originally, and where I went to school and my community growing up was very much like get your ducks in a row. So the only time I had a real job was right out of college, and I had a career started in commercial real estate, but my passion was fitness. So before work, after work, on the weekends, I was teaching workout classes in Chicago, which is where I moved right out of school. I loved it, but the real estate job moved me to Boston. And the only way I knew how to make friends and continue doing what I loved was to actually land a job with what is called the best workout in the world, Barry's. Now it's formerly known as Barry's Boot Camp. So I started working there, and very soon into my time in Boston, I started a business for coaching fat loss, because what I realized is a lot of the people coming into the workout classes, sure, exercise is great for endorphins, but there was always this underlying motivation to lose weight. And so I knew how to help them with that. And I had all the certifications for it, which I also did in my spare time. And so I started Crossroads of Fitness, and I learned that the people who wanted coaching were people who were self-starters, self-motivators, and I was really just a guide for them. And then the real estate company ended up firing me, which is sort of a scary thing to admit and to have gone through. But it was sort of a crazy story, so I wrote a whole book about it. So I have a novel based on true events called Dare to Move. And ever since that job fired me, I've sort of been what I like to call a free agent, running my coaching business, consulting, doing real estate projects, podcasting, and writing, and most recently becoming a mom.
Wow. Well, let's I've got a couple quick, which is kind of interesting, because when I first ran across you, because, I'm an exercise physiologist. I've been in the fitness world for 40 years.
Wow.
So, I've started off as a teacher and a coach.
Cool.
And now I'm doing, I did brain and spinal cord rehab for a long time. And that's where I probably learned the most, with individuals that had some of the worst things you can imagine. And the thing that made me unique, Garrett, and which I want to learn more about you, is that I was able to take the stuff that I learned from my coach, who's still my coach, and actually I'm coaching him now, of 47 years. I applied those same fitness principles to people that had traumatic injuries, and guess what? They worked. And it drove the medical community absolutely bonkers.
Yeah.
Because they don't like change. And if you look around today, they're not doing too much in that area as it is today. So people like us have a tendency to drive people crazy, which is why you got fired and I'm fairly unemployable. But that's okay. So it sounds like you started, you have this degree, whatever that might be, but you've highlighted some things here that I want to talk about. And I want to start with the first one, because you mentioned in your intro that you're a new mom, and I didn't realize how new you were, because you put that new mom in all caps when you sent that over to me. So that obviously is something that you're super proud of, because my daughter, my youngest, is a new mom.
Oh, congratulations.
And so I'm not, you said a month, so I know exactly what you're going through right now, not as a female, but what you're going through. So why don't you start there and let us know how that is affecting everything that you're doing in your fitness and in your professional world?
Gosh, it's so humbling, because it's, as I'm sure you've experienced, when you're a coach, you can always attest to your personal experience in something. So I could talk about my powerlifting, my kettlebell training, my bodybuilding, but I often coached new moms. I often coached postpartum women. I often helped moms whose kids were finally going to high school on how to lose weight and find themselves again. And so I had only experienced those things in theory and through coaching. And now here I am living it. And I guess, again, the only thing I can say is it's really humbling, because the other thing I talk a lot about with my business coaches and mindset coaching clients is how to really find time for yourself and how to make yourself a priority. And the different points at which I find my clients in their life, they are struggling with that. And it always was like, oh, you're not struggling with that. That's just an excuse. And now here I am with a 14-week-old baby. He's 14 weeks today. And I'm like, whoa, I know what that's like to feel like your life is not necessarily yours right now. And so one of the things there's two things that have been interesting. One is the physical fitness side of it. What's it like to get back in my body? And the second part is work. And so one of the things I did before I gave birth was I pre-recorded a ton of podcasts, and I had an intern launch all of them and run them for about 8 weeks after the baby came. So it kind of looked like I never missed a beat, but I wasn't doing much. And then I had 3 of my year-long clients go on pause for the month of May. So I took 4 weeks, no phone, no video calls, anything like that. But I did have 2 clients in the background still kind of checking in on text. And then I picked up not full speed, but I had about 5 to 7 clients in May. So it's been just kind of like a hybridized thing. And I'm really fortunate to be able to piecemeal this together on my own, because a lot of moms have this 12-week period and they have to go back to a corporate space. So I can't empathize with that because it's not my experience, but I can also say that I spent my 20s creating my life so that in this moment I can be at the pool with my baby today, but also be here with you tonight.
Yeah, and that's amazing, and I can hear the passion in your voice, which is incredible, because you know as well as I do the heavy and the responsibility you're going to have for that individual just starting, and which is really cool though, because that's an incredible amount of power and a blessing, really. But I'm gonna cross this up a little bit, because you mentioned something here and it caught my ear, and then you just talked about it right now. This pole vaulter powerlifting. Did you leave out a comma there?
Yeah.
So you are. This is too bizarre. My coach of 47 years, his name is John Cantor. He was a former world champion powerlifter.
Wow.
Because I was a powerlifter as well for many years.
I love it.
And he also was a phenomenal pole vaulter at the University of West Virginia back in the 50s and early 60s. I don't
know if I've met a pole vaulter that also powerlifted.
Well, back then in the late 50s and early 60s, they used a steel pole.
Yes. Yes. My coach's dad coached my great uncle, sort of a weird thing in the pole vaulting world. And they talked about that.
Yeah. And a good friend of mine, his name, and ask your coaches, or ask anybody you know in their world about a gentleman named Brian Sternberg, who would have been on the 64 Olympic team. Wow. And he was a phenomenal, he probably would have won the gold medal. and I worked with him as a quadriplegic. He lives up in Washington. He broke his neck because a lot of pole vaulters had to practice gymnastics, and he did a lot of work on the trampoline. And because before that, John, when my coach did it with the steel pole, he had to be super strong to pull himself up over with that steel pole that didn't flex. So he was, able to do a handstand and all that good stuff and be super strong. So that is amazing. All this stuff here. And that was just, didn't even know when I saw your profile. I'm always trying to connect with people that have some similar interests here. So that was very interesting that you were a pole vaulter, power lifter, obviously a fitness person, a coach. But you also highlighted something here in caps that I want you to maybe elaborate on is teamwork. Why? Why did you elaborate that?
Gosh, it's something that I think is really undervalued. There's an emphasis on it, but it's undervalued. And I'm exploring that in the corporate space now with a lot of the executives I coach, and helping a startup out of Australia called Squadify that has a really high emphasis on teamwork, because we have a lot of siloed things inside companies. Like you have the sales team, you have the operations team, for example, and the sales team meets and they all get on a Zoom once a week and they're clapping and they're like, hey, you in Arizona, you sold this much, and I'm over here in Indiana and I did this. But what's interesting is those salespeople, the only way they can make those sales and kind of fulfill the sale, so to speak, is with their operations team. So there's an emphasis I'm seeing on looking at cross-functional teams and a flatter corporate structure. And to be a little bit deeper here on why this matters to me is I hated the corporate environment. I thought the red tape was BS. I luckily worked for a small company, but I worked as a third party for companies like CVS and gas stations when I did real estate, and their companies just had all this red tape and politics and drama. And the way that Squadify and my role with them that we believe is teams are going to be, the corporate structure should become flat, and the team should be these really autonomous, hyper productive units that almost work like the military. And so I'm excited to really be working on that in the business world, because I don't know about you, but when I played sports growing up, and my sports were cheerleading, where a lot of people don't call it that, but someone's literally throwing you in the air and you have to trust them to catch you, right? And those were some of the most meaningful days of my life. So I really believe in teamwork.
Well, yeah, and I'm going to touch on a couple things here. Have you ever heard of Bill Campbell?
Bill Campbell, yes, I have.
$1 billion coach.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And what he was able to do, leaving, I think he was at Hewlett Packard. No. Either way, but he made it out to Silicon Valley and was instrumental with Steve Jobs and a number of others out there in Google. And so he brought that same mindset that you're talking about to Silicon Valley.
They're picking up the school right now.
35 years ago. And then obviously books like Daniel Coyle's Culture Code, which you may have heard about as well.
I've heard of it, but I haven't read it.
It's a great book. And it talks about three things that I've, since you brought that up, that I try to, because to me, when I talk to businesses or do coaching, three things are important that most businesses don't get. You get it now because you're an athlete and a coach. And so you can get the 10,000 foot view, which most of these folks that didn't compete don't really understand. And that is trust. That's what you just mentioned there with being a cheerleader. It takes a lot of trust on you when somebody throws you up in the air, which is why team building events back in the 80s was kind of a big thing.
Trust fall.
Yeah, trust fall. Yeah. So they're throwing you up in the air and you go, boy, I hope they're going to catch me. Right. Right. So trust, safety. So if a team feels safe that they can share an idea or be vulnerable, right? Because vulnerability is powerful. And if teams can kind of pull together with vulnerability, not feel like somebody's going to remember the movie, Old School?
Yeah.
Remember when Frank the Tank got in trouble and had to go to counseling with his wife, and the guy goes, "Wait a minute, I thought we were in a trust in the tree of trust."
Yeah, it's real trust.
He goes, "We're not trusting here." So, but you know this, when you talk to or you bring people in from a business or a team, and they'll tell you stuff like, "No, I don't feel safe in this environment," right?
Well, that's how I got into it. I'd be working with an executive, and I'm like, I can help you with your childhood wounds. We can look at your own BS, for lack of a better term, but the stuff that's going on in there, you can only work on you, and you can't fix other people. But what we could do, and then I found about this tool that I now use with teams, is work on the team as a unit and just sit with that and how are they operating. And then, like you said, if they feel safe, they can speak with their own voices. They can innovate better. They can execute better. And that all stems from trust.
Yeah. And then the last point I like to bring up is if we have a shared purpose or cause. So whether you have, the marketing team, the business team, the admin team, if all these teams have and that's where I think I love what you're talking about with the military. And you're probably leaning more towards like the SEALs, these teams of 6, lifting the log and the things that they have to do together.
Yes.
And I know that's when you mention military, for the most part, that's what most people talk about, because they have to have that shared purpose or cause.
Yes.
They're not going to be pulling their own weight. They're just not going. And I think businesses, you probably run into the same problem. If we don't have I guess it comes down to that mission statement that everybody's trying to put together, values on. And if you don't all buy into that, it makes it awful hard. What do you think?
Yeah, so I'm going to keep bringing it back to this tool, Squadify, just because I've been so present to it recently. But it looks at these 3 C's that come from, believe it or not, this tool was born out of a global leadership consultancy called LIW in Australia. And the founders of that were in the Australian military. And they're looking for clarity, competence, and climate. And so, to your point, clarity usually talks about, are we all working for the same goal here? Are we all on the same page? And then on that higher purpose, in some teams' cases, if you can really align it to their individual values, then it's,
Hey, Garrett, hold that thought, because I want to come right back to that. We're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back, okay? All right, we are back with Garrett Wood, and she is a CEO. She's a coach. She's founded a great company called Crossroads of Fitness, and she's also, probably most importantly, a new mom. So, but we're talking about corporate culture, which is a kind of a passion of mine. being a coach and someone who likes to put together teams. And it sounds like that's who you are as well, Garrett. And sometimes, putting together teams is like herding cats, I guess. But only because if you don't pick the right people, it's like I once heard Lou Saban. Is it Lou Saban? Alabama coach. Saban. Yeah. Is it Lou? No. Yeah. Either way, he said, look, it's about getting the right people on the bus and the wrong people off the bus.
Yeah.
It really is. And so that's where coaching and leadership comes in, because most people in the business environment, the corporate environment right now, are good managers. They're managers, but a good manager is not a leader. Okay? Can they be? Sure, they can be, but it generally doesn't. A manager is a manager first, and a leader is someone who's special. They're different. And so when you are mentioning this tool, which I'm interested in learning more about, because it sounds like a lot of times they use different words to describe the same things. And like you talked about clarity, because without clarity, it's awful hard to know what everybody else is doing.
Yeah.
It's got to be kind of clear. And they got to feel. So how would trust play into the tool that you're using right now? And how would purpose or cause play into that tool? Why don't you take a few more minutes and explain this, since it sounds like you're passionate about it.
I know, it's funny. I'm like, I want to share everything. I've been in so many meetings about it.
That's okay.
So Squadify has been born again out of this global leadership consultancy from Australia called LIW, with 30 years of experience of coaching. And so what they did is they codified through a lot of work and being backed by the London School of Economics, like, what are the conditions for success? So the conditions, clarity, competence, and climate, are the 3 C's that they look for with this tool. And what the tool is you send out 37 questions to your team. So let's say you're the leader, you've got 10 people on your team, which would be a big team. Send it all out. They all answer these 37 questions that are underneath either climate, clarity, or competency. Sorry, I said culture. And it's everything from how important is it to be happy at work? Someone might say 5 out of 5. Then they go through, they do the 37 questions again. And the second time you answer, how present is this for you? So anonymously, all these kind of questionnaires are given, and then the responses come in. And what it looks for are the different, each question signifies a marker for, is there trust present or not? So it's not going to say, do you trust your team blatantly? But these questions will help determine that. So then you get into the dynamic. So underneath the 3 C's, clarity, competency, and climate, you will see your rating on trust, innovation, execution, motivation, and now I'm forgetting the last one. I think it's something, the word is missing me, but basically, do you feel psychological safety?
I get it.
Yeah.
And so then the leader of the team can you can facilitate a meeting with the leader and then the team, right?
So what happens is they call us Squadify pros if you're certified in it. And I highly recommend any executive coach out there, put this in your back pocket. It's really a great tool. It's being used in Google, Salesforce, Adobe right now, Amazon. And basically what happens is I'll say, hey, coach, Arnie, we're going to go through the results. Believe it or not, climate's actually your lowest score, and it's showing that you guys have high innovation, low trust. What do you think that's about? So you and I put our heads together, then we go to the team, and what happens is a really, really high impact conversation, because a lot of the people I'm sure listening have sat in a weekly or a monthly team or all company meeting, and it's like, what are we even doing here? Like, nothing's getting done. So like everyone hides behind, like, there's people who don't want to speak up, there's people who overspeak because they're insecure. So the data speaks for itself, and you all get to just pull it up and be like, oh wow, we can all agree that we feel like we have the wrong person in the wrong job, or we don't have the resources to get our job done.
I love it. I mean, there's so many neat, and right now, especially post-COVID, you've got some real dynamics right now. Number one, you have people don't even want to be there.
Mm-hmm.
Number two, you have people that are there. Do they feel safe?
Yeah.
Are they on the same page? I mean, there's so many moving pieces here.
Remote work.
Yeah. And then you have, I did a talk one time in an office. There was 5 generations in one office.
Wow. That's
5. Well, you have your Gen Z, your millennials, you had your Gen X, you have boomers, and you have the greatest generation all in there. And so, and each one of them brings a special skill to the office.
Really?
And that's leadership, because you don't want to have maybe a Gen Zer who could whip together a digital document and in 30 seconds and have him doing something that's going to make him uncomfortable, like speak in front of the group, versus you don't want the 75-year-old to go in and have to create a digital document using some kind of weird software that he's going to go, what? He goes, can I just talk to everybody?
Yeah.
So, and so you have to kind of know your people, just like if you were a football coach or a basketball coach, because I once heard a talk where a guy he was playing on a basketball team, and the first team was kind of goofing around. So he said, hey, we're going to try something different today. So he took the first team and he put the point guard at center. He put the shooting guard at power forward, and he did the center. I mean, he moved everybody around. And then they played the second team, and the second team put everybody where they normally would play. And the second team wiped out the first team.
Yeah.
And you already know why. As a coach, you know why, because they were all out of position.
Yeah.
And how many times do we see? I'm sure you see it. You walk into a corporate situation, you talk to the leader, and you can probably identify, because it's not emotional to you. It is to him or the team, but to you, it's not emotional. And so you're like, look, that guy's in the wrong spot.
Yeah.
You need to get him out of there.
And it's hard in a command and control environment for people to even feel safe to share any of that.
Yeah. And that's powerful stuff, because, unless you have even more control, unless that leader has control over that, now that's putting them in a situation where, okay, where do we go from here? Especially if you're dealing with startup stuff, and it's even harder. And so these are things that are happening right now at an escalating pace, because things are moving so fast, and finding good people. I mean, everybody's hiring, right? Because they can't find people that want to even come to work to deal with that kind of stuff anymore. And so you've got a lot of things here. So we end up settling and putting people in positions that shouldn't be there, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, okay, cool. So is this, what percentage of your business is this, what'd you call it? Squadify?
Squadify is a tool, yes, that I use in my executive coaching, but I've recently taken on a role as a contractor. I don't like the salaried positions. I don't think I've had a salary in 7 years. But I've been doing some work in business development for Squadify because I believe in it so much, and I want to get it in the States, and I want to see more companies use this tool.
So is it up here? Are they doing it here in the US?
Yeah, I've done it. I've Squadified a real estate company in Boston, and then we're working with a ton of companies out of Silicon Valley and a few in New York. So it's here, but the bigger companies like Google US and Salesforce, Adobe, they're all sort of using this because the companies that need to innovate need that team, that human capital, to be so strong and reliable.
Okay, here's another question. Is it a more effective tool when it's done in person or through Zoom or some other kind of digital platform?
So it's all done. It's all email based, where you're going to send to your teammates the questions, they're going to answer them. Data is going to be aggregated. It's all going to be on sort of a hub that you can go in and look at. But then the debrief is done. It's all started during COVID. So they've all been done on Zoom. I think there were some maybe in Australia that were done in person. And hopefully they will be done in person once we can all meet, forward without Zoom.
Well, I mean, a coach could fly in for
totally
weekend and do a meet with the management team, and then come together and meet with the separate teams, and then maybe as a group as well. As you expand out here, which I think is the most effective way to get things, because I mean, I think anybody that has a business wants their business to be effective. I mean, let's be honest. I mean,
and you want to find the gaps too. Like we're seeing this across like a business as think about a car dealership. You have all these dealerships or an automotive group, and you can see which store is performing and why. Beyond just looking at the financials, you can be like, wow, at our Lexus store, we can see that their teams have a really high degree of trust. At this store, they're slacking, and their biggest failure is execution. Like it would all speak for itself, which is pretty neat.
Yeah. Okay. Stay on this point for a second here, because I want to pull you back into your fitness. I want you to put your fitness hat back on, because I know, because as soon as I said fitness, you start smiling. So is fitness, how are you weaving fitness into this, or is it something you're just doing as another separate silo or bucket?
So call it a silo within my company that I don't really market or advertise, but people know me for it. They know me for specifically a program I started called the Dare to Eat program, because I'm very much aware that for a lot of women who have a history of chronic under eating, over exercising, poor diets, eating enough and really fueling themselves can feel scary. It can feel like a dare. So call it Dare to Eat. And I currently have 2 Dare to Eat clients actually. And what I've done is taken that program, which was initially more, let's call it in the science, like what do you need to do to actually lose fat? What's a realistic timeline look like? How do you do this sustainably? All of that, to why are we even trying to lose weight in the first place, and doing the deeper mindset work behind that. So I have an online course that I now I mandate that all of my clients do. If they want to lose weight, with my guidance, they have to do the deeper mindset work alongside of that.
I love that, because I have a background in working with eating disorders as well.
Yeah.
And I was just telling somebody a couple of days ago that it's probably the largest underlying addiction there is, and it's the only addiction that you can't go without the drug.
Yeah, you have to eat every day. I tell my clients, I'm like, look, you're a human. Part of the deal is eating food, so you got to do this somehow. But yeah, it took me a while to realize, luckily not too long, how many people were coming to me, not realizing that they were looking for as me as a way to continue some sort of disorder. And so then I felt this burden of diagnosing that, which, I don't take on anything I shouldn't. I often refer out, but it was very challenging. But that was part of what motivated me to get into mindset work and mindset coaching, to help people understand their deeper rooted issues and why they have the emotional issues they do that cause them to have such addictions.
No, it is. And I learned a lot about that. What you just said there in that field, talk about trust issues.
Whew.
I mean, you and I could talk for a couple hours on this alone. But it's so powerful. And that's where a young mom like yourself makes a lot of these young ladies, for the most part, young ladies, feel safe, that they can talk to you and trust you, which takes time. It's behavior over time. And so once they do trust you, you'll get it all. And then it's what you do with it at that point. And that's the tricky part. So I can understand how that kind of pushed you into learning more about mindset. Because
limiting beliefs.
Oh no, all that stuff, because there are some deep wounds there. I always like to say it was like they're in a deep, dark pit. And they were waiting for Garrett to come by and not just go, come on, you can do this, and give them a rah-rah. That doesn't work. But they were waiting for Garrett to grab her sword and gird up, as they say, and jump down in there. Yeah. And because they're sitting next to a scary monster down there.
Yeah. And to be honest, I had disordered eating myself, so I can empathize in ways that I don't think they expect me to right away. It's also tricky because I'm now so far past that, thankfully, that I try really hard to empathize, sympathize without not saying now, oh, I'm so far past it, I'm so much better than you, but also
Right.
like not pulling myself back to a place where I coddle them too much. Because codependency and coaching can be a slippery slope as well. And my natural, as if you could already tell, inclination is I'm the hype girl, I'm the cheerleader.
Yeah.
And I had to learn how to draw that line in my coaching work, because at the end of the day, the people have to want it themselves, and they have to, like you said, they have to know that they're in that pit. And some people aren't willing to admit it. So they come to me like, oh, you're going to help me lose weight and then I'll feel better about myself. It's like, no. We're going to understand, how could you feel better if nothing ever changed about your body?
Right. Yeah. If you can't love yourself, you're not going to be able to love anybody else anyways.
Yeah.
And so, a lot of this, Garrett, when I told you I did brain and spinal cord rehab, one of the reasons that as an exercise physiologist, here I was teaching and employing physical therapists, occupational speech people who all thought they were, above me. And one of the things that I was able to do that they, for the most part, couldn't do, I called it my hand in glove technique. And you mentioned the word empathy there, which is really key today in today's society, especially in that people that have a traumatic injury, and let's just put folks that have an eating disorder there as well. They don't like this. Do this, do that. And that's what you get usually in some type of therapy.
Yes.
And so they're onto that. And so what I had to learn how to do is crawl inside their bodies and see the world from their point of view, not to agree with it, but just to understand. We all want to be understood. They just wanted to be understood. How many times have we heard, you don't get it, you don't understand? That's all they want. Just understand. And then once you get there, and now you can start encouraging them and loving them, it's amazing what you can accomplish at that point with them. It's amazing, because all of them have been told what to do. I mean, this is not rocket science, right? I
always tell people, I'm like, you Google this.
This is not hard. This is not hard. And so we all know, how many people don't know you're not supposed to eat a lot of sugar if you want to keep yourself trim and healthy? I mean, this is not rocket science. Okay. Yeah. But if they don't trust you, if you don't understand them, why? Like people, it's like when you finally crack into that, and I know you know what this means. When you finally get down deep and say, Garrett, see my monster friend right here? This guy, this monster here, this person is going to kill me. And now that's in their head. Yeah. This person is going to really harm me. And it's once you understand that, now you can start to help them to overcome these challenges that they're dealing with. And it could be a wound from an abusive situation when they were 5 years old, or a boyfriend or girlfriend, whatever it might be. They just want to be understood, instead of, oh, come on, get over it, grow up. I mean, they don't want to hear that stuff. And so this is powerful stuff. And the neat stuff about that, because that's stuff that very few people understand, Garrett, it makes you unique in the corporate world, because it makes you even more powerful working with executive teams.
Yeah. One of the exciting things about Boston pre-COVID was I taught fitness classes up through June of 2020 at Barry's Boot Camp. And the last few months were on Zoom, obviously, because the world was shut down. But I would be doing I did some real estate brokerage projects. So I'd be in downtown Boston at a real estate site talking with people, whether it's the landlord or the other real estate folks. And then I go in to teach a Barry's Bootcamp class, and I see the investors on the treadmill, or I see the CEO on the floor lifting weights, or I'm correcting a billionaire's squat form. So it was really neat, because I would often get recognized in a high-rise building, like, wait, did you teach my 5 a.m. workout class today? And then I'm in like my corporate, whatever look.
Sure.
Yeah, actually I did. And so what I like about it, and this kind of brings a lot of what we're talking about full circle, including the nutrition stuff, is that something about berries and I think fitness in general and why it's taking such a hold and why there's so much money going into that space right now, the wellness space, is because it's a place where people feel like they're seen and heard and they can really be their true selves. And my biggest issue with corporate when I first started, which again, like I said, my experience is quite limited because I just knew I didn't like it, was that I couldn't be the Garrett I was after hours in hours. And I thought, but if I'm my fullest expression of myself, I'm probably going to be the most valuable to this company, right? But if I have to mute something within myself, I'm only half here. That's why I didn't stay. And so I hope that tools like Squadify and the companies that, believe it or not, I have a client, I don't know if I should name the bank, but I have a client that signed with me this week. His company is actually paying for his coaching because enough people are believing in this now because they do want their employees to be the fullest expressions of themselves. The problem is the culture is a little bit behind. And that's why so many people are running to be full-time fitness instructors, and that sounds fun to them because they can be themselves. And I hope that in the post-COVID era, as we move to this hybridized workforce, or whether it's remote and in person or just in person, that people can really show up fully, because that's what was happening on Zoom. People are like, oh, hey, my 3-year-old's in the background here, and what are they going to do about it? That's real life,
Yeah.
And I love that. I think that's one of the blessings from COVID.
Yeah. Well, I want you, Garrett. I mean, this is good stuff, and we just scratching the surface on you because you've got a lot of stuff going on. Why don't you take the last couple minutes here, share with everybody how they can learn more about you, learn more about Squadify, learn more about anything else, your Dare to Move program, your podcast, anything else that they can, how they can find you or follow you or anything like that.
Sure thing. So my email's in the screen. This email, GWCROF, you can email me there to ask about Squadify. Squadify.net is the website, so you can access that and just check it out. If you go through me, I can get you a free trial with your corporate team. Garrett Nichole Wood, you can find info on my podcast there. My book is also called Dare to Move. It's a novel based on true events. And I think Instagram. I'm very active on Instagram at Garrett N. Wood.
Yeah, I didn't even want to go with. I knew I wanted to get to your book, but I knew we were running short on time, so that's okay. And there's a lot more. Maybe we'll have you back at some point. But you're an amazing young lady. I'm really super happy that I ran into you here, and
thanks for having me.
Time just flew by here, which is always a good sign. And like I said, we could have talked about so many different things for the whole time, which is really cool. I'm gonna connect up with you and learn more about Squadify as well. I like things like that. I'm always open to learning new things, and whether it be in coaching or fitness, and just a passion of mine as well. So, Garrett, I really super am happy that I've met you, and I'm glad you came on the show and we were able to work.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah,
great to meet you. This was so fun.
Yeah, and there's somebody there checking you out. So I appreciate you, Garrett. Enjoy the Aspen area there where you're at, wherever you're at, and have a blessed vacation. Hopefully, you're getting some needed rest as a mom there, and then we'll be in contact with you.
Awesome. Thanks so much for having me. It was really nice to meet you, and hope to stay in touch.
Oh, we will. Thank you, Garrett. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.